Today on Flying, Fishing, and Food, we head up to Boone, North Carolina to Appalachian State University. Today we're interviewing Erich Schlenker, the Managing Director of the Entrepreneurial Program at Appalachian State University. The Entrepreneurial Program is a part of the Walker College of Business located in Peacock Hall on the campus. The mission of the Center for Entrepreneurship, or CFE, is to instill an entrepreneur mindset and provide mentorship to help both students and folks in the community achieve their goals in starting a business. We sit down with Erich to really understand how the center is achieving these goals. So, I'm here with Erich Schlenker?
Schlenker.
Erich
Yes.
Schlenker.
Yes.
I'm here with Erich Schlenker. What is your title here?
I am the Managing Director of the Transportation Insight Center for Entrepreneurship.
Okay,
at
that's a
Appalachian
mouthful.
State. Yes, it is.
That is a mouthful. So tell me about the center. Tell me about the center and how it plays a role at the university.
Well, our job is to work with primarily students, but also faculty, staff, and community members and alumni who have an idea for a business. Some students are just sort of kicking the tires and thinking, oh, I'd like to be an entrepreneur someday. What does that mean? And what kind of skills do I need and experience? So we'll work with students that don't have ideas, that want to sort of get into the entrepreneurial mindset. And we have programs and workshops that help with that. And then there are students that have ideas and they really want to flesh them out and see if they can get them rolling. So we incubate those ideas with the students, try to figure out how to do low cost, low risk experiments so they can do customer discovery and build business models, things on paper to test the viability of the ideas. And then when they're ready, the students can run their business right here out of the Center for Entrepreneurship. And we give them swipe access to the building 365 days a year, and this becomes their office space. And they use all the resources of the center and the College of Business to get the idea going. So we've got a number of students who run businesses out of the center.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So how did it get created? What was the genesis of the center?
Well, the genesis was prior to me, but my understanding is that we have an entrepreneurship program here at App State. You can get a minor in entrepreneurship and match that with any major in the university. And so the founding faculty member is Brian Toney. And he decided that we needed a center for entrepreneurship, and he lined up some supporters and mentors like you, and from 2012, and came in and helped to formulate the concept. And then Transportation Insight, which is a third-party logistics company in Hickory, put up a large chunk of money to outfit the space and to provide some funding over an extended period of time. And so you hired me. You were on my selection committee. You hired me to bring an outside perspective. So I'm not an academic, even though I work in the university system. My background is in business, and I came in to try to bring some real world connection to entrepreneurship and help it flourish in an academic environment.
Right.
Sometimes academia and entrepreneurship don't exactly blend together very well.
Right.
But I try to act as the bridge.
And when did you come in?
2014.
2014. So do you have to be in the business department to take advantage of the program? Is it something that's exclusive to the business department, or is it broader than that?
Oh, it's much broader than that. We spend a lot of our marketing effort making sure that students from across campus have access to these resources. And because we're in the business school, it does limit foot traffic primarily to business students. But all of our outreach is to make sure that people in theater and dance and sustainable tech and any of the other industrial design, those tend to be a lot of the places where people are developing products, people are taking their expertise and trying to figure out how to start their own business using their passions and talents. And then our job is to figure out how to translate that into a business that's actually viable on the outside. So we get about half of our students are non-business students, and our goal is to get that number as high as we can.
So no matter what college they're in at the university, if they've got a great business idea, they can come here and get the support they need to really launch it.
That's it. That's it. And they don't need a great business idea. They just need a business idea.
Right.
A lot of times students will come in with an idea, and we go through that incubation process, and they realize, well, the feedback I'm getting suggests that maybe customers are looking for something different. And so there's a lot of pivots that happen as they mold their idea to match the market. And that process is fun to go through. A lot of times they wind up with businesses that are very different than what they started with.
Okay. Tell me about some of the successes that have come out of the program. Just give me a feel for, I mean, you've been working with students for a while now. You know, you've had businesses being launched out of here. Can you highlight a couple of them?
Yeah, one that pops to mind is a student named Zach Amar, and he was an MBA student, and he's one of those people that said, I've worked for other people that I didn't like it very much. I want to work for myself, right? So he said, I'm going to come in here every day until I come up with a business idea that I can launch as a student, and it will become my career choice. And so he sat in the conference room on our whiteboards and brought friends in and brought food and Mountain Dews and whatever was required. And I challenged him to come up with some ideas for business plan competitions, and he would collaborate with his friends. And one day he came in and he had gone to the recycle center to drop off his trash and scuffed up his pants, and he was kind of upset and flustered because he had to make a presentation. He was wearing a suit and now his pants were dirty. And he said, wait a minute. If you live inside the town of Boone, there are 20,000 people that the garbage man comes once a week and takes away your trash and recycling. But there's 50,000 people in the county. And so if you're not one of the 20, then you've got to take your own trash and recycling down to the recycle center. There's got to be people like me who don't want to do that. And we live in this sharing economy where Airbnb and Uber, and they're all using community resources to solve problems without big infrastructure expenses.
Right.
And so he said, why don't we match the people who have a pickup truck and wouldn't mind earning some extra money with the people who don't want to take down their own trash and recycling, and create essentially a rural garbage and recycling service. So in true entrepreneurial fashion, and he did almost no market research other than he put his company name and his
He felt the pain already.
yeah, and he put his company name and his cell phone on a yard sign. He stuck it in the ground in a busy intersections outside the town of Boone, and waited for the phone to ring. And the phone rang, and he had a little Subaru, and he would run around and pick up people's trash in the beginning, and then it would grow and grow and grow. And now he's got a business partner, and he's got route optimization software, and he's got 1,000+ clients, and
Nice.
and the business is growing in all the neighboring counties, and he's really tapped into something which hopes to be really profitable for him.
Very, very
Just
cool.
bought an actual machine. He's got a big garbage truck with his name blazoned across the side of it. So he's expanding the business and the business model, but looking for ways to optimize his revenue and profit. But he's doing very well. And he's sort of the poster child. We use his example all the time because he says, yeah, I came to Appalachian to get an MBA to learn how to be a garbage man. But he's
Very
doing
cool.
super well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any others that come to mind that you'd want to highlight?
Yeah. So another good example is two young ladies came into the center and said, we know how to. We're hairstylists, and we would like to open a salon in Boone. And I said, okay, great. Do you think we can do it? I said, yeah, I think you can do it. Of course, I think you can do it. So it turns out they were aware that in this town of Boone, if you want to get a nice high-end haircut, you have to go off the mountain, or a lot of people do go off the mountain to get their hair styled in a salon like in Charlotte or somewhere else. And they said they want to bring that experience to Boone. And so we worked with them to crunch numbers, figure out what book of business do you think you can take with you when you transition out of your current role. How many stations are you going to need? How many stylists are you going to need? And what large space will you? And they worked it all out on paper, and the numbers looked great. And so they got a lease. They upfitted their space. And now Canvas Beauty Bar is one of the priciest haircuts you can get in town, and you have to wait the longest to get a spot. So it's been super successful for them. They just moved to a new location in the middle and center of town, and they just opened today, as a matter of fact.
Fantastic.
So they're super excited.
It's a great success story.
Yeah, it is.
So as a student would come to the center, talk about the resources in a little more detail of what you guys do. How do you help the student through the process? Because launching a business is a very detailed process. So can you kind of take me through the process that you guys work with students on, helping them launch a business?
Yeah, well, the first thing is you got to figure out what the student is trying to get done, right? Because we found that intrinsic motivation is really what makes all the difference. It's students, you got to understand what the student is trying to accomplish instead of saying, okay, your idea means that we're going to jam you into this process designed for everyone, and out pops a business at the other end.
Right.
So some students are interested in just exploring entrepreneurship, and that has a whole different set of programs. But if they've got their idea, then the first thing that we want them to do is figure out how to clearly identify the problem you're solving. Because a lot of the ideas are solutions looking for a problem.
Right.
And so if you can get them to clearly identify the problem that they're solving and how specifically their solution solves that problem, sometimes you spend a lot of time just in that early phase getting them to really articulate what solution they're doing and where it fits. And then you've got to do the competitive analysis to figure out what alternatives to that solution exist in the marketplace already.
Right.
And then their value proposition is how do their specific features and functions address those problems in a unique enough way that someone is willing to trade their hard-earned dollars for that particular solution. And just getting to the point where their value proposition is clear, they have a good sense for what the industry looks like and where they fit, and then they can articulate their solution in 50 words or less. Because sometimes the first time a student sits and explains what they're doing, sometimes it takes you 15 minutes
Right.
to know what they're
80
doing, right?
slides later.
Right. And so we boil all that down so the message is really crisp.
Right.
And then you start with the customer discovery and business modeling. So we take that value proposition and we encourage them to go out and find your ideal customer. Who is that person that is uniquely in a position to value what you're creating? So that person's likely going to be super excited when the product gets launched. They're going to be first in line to buy it. They're likely to tell everybody else about it. And so if you can, sometimes it's an avatar. You imagine who that person might be, but then we challenge them to go find that person. And it's like doing the sales process except on the front end. And when they go find them, we try to get them to, we have them prepare a set of open-ended questions that's different from, I made this, what do you think?
Right.
Because a lot of people think they've done this great market research because they've asked all their friends and their friends love the idea, right? So you go talk to a stranger and then you ask them questions so that they don't know what you're trying to validate.
Right.
They can't figure that out from the questions. And so you're soliciting buying behaviors so that they're going to volunteer information about whether this product solves a problem that they think is a problem that they would spend money on, if they've solved it currently or in other ways, that you want to hear about those experiences. And then at the end of that customer discovery process, you have a pretty good sense, if you ask enough questions, where the patterns are. What do the customers typically like? How will they typically behave? And if that validates your business idea, that's great news. But if it doesn't, that's important news, and you've got to then either identify a new ideal customer, or you've got to modify your product so that you have product market fit when you launch.
Right.
That process takes a while.
Right.
That's usually where students slow down the process, right? Because it's awkward to go talk to people and to collect that kind of feedback. But once you do it, it's super valuable.
Sure. So as students come with an idea and get it pulled together, one of the challenges is, well, yeah, I mean, these are students. So where do they get funding to, kind of get an idea off the ground? Does the university provide any support in those areas?
Yeah, that's a good question. And a lot of students come in and they're used to seeing Shark Tank. So it's very common for me to get a student to sit down and say, hey, I've got this business idea. Someone's offered me $10,000 for 40% of my business. And I said, hold on.
Stop.
Yeah, let's back up. Right. But you're right. Students are typically financially constrained, shall we say. So there's a number of different funding options that they have, and it sits on a spectrum. So the first opportunity they have is we have business plan pitch competitions where you can earn $1,000 up to $3,000 in one of our competitions where they pitch their idea. In the fall, we have one that's an idea only, so it's super easy and we're not expecting a lot of detail. The one that we do in the spring is more of a launch party, so it's for students who have developed that idea and are ready to take revenue. The numbers are higher there. We also have a student venture fund here at Appalachian where if a student has a viable idea and they just need that little bit of seed scratch, it's not a lot of funding, up to $2,000 per project, but $2,000 for a student can unlock a lot for buying a tool or a piece of software or a GoPro camera or do some market research or some travel, all associated with building the business. But that's not prize money. That is almost a grant where you say, if you've got a specific need, you can request the money. We ask you to present to the advisory board on exactly what you're looking for, and if granted, you are expected to spend that money on that product. And so we do that follow up here in the center to make sure.
So it is like a mini Shark Tank in a way, huh?
It is in a mini Shark Tank. You're right, and the students love it.
Right.
And then so above that, if you're starting to look beyond the $2,000 or $3,000 range, we work a lot with CDFIs, community development financial institutions, and those tend to be much more flexible. Their interest rates are a little higher, but they're more flexible in like the need for collateral. We've gotten students that have gotten loans there. There are some local angel networks, and we've had some students present at those angel networks. Most of those projects, that started about a year or two ago. We haven't really had any angel investing yet. Most of the students who get ready to pitch there have already sort of seen the value of growing their company organically. And so they're hesitant to take that early seed money, pre-revenue money, because it's so expensive.
Yeah, give away the business.
You give away the business. And so we've got the local angel networks that will bring them in and want to give them money, and then students are like, yeah, no thanks, which just creates some more, anticipation and demand. But so the access to capital is really not as big of a hurdle for students these days as it has been in the past.
Sure.
There's a number of places where you can get funding if you need it, and we can help steer them in those directions.
Fantastic. So this is more of a philosophical question. So, in your opinion, is the entrepreneurial spirit, is that born in someone, or can it be taught?
Oh,
can you learn that spirit?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's the great unanswered question. And given the fact that I'm in a university, I'm going to have to say that it can be taught.
Exactly.
For my own self-preservation. But I when you look at the entrepreneurial mindset, and we spend a lot of time talking about this, what we find is that it's not a digital on off, right? Either I have it or I don't have it. Everybody's got elements of the entrepreneurial mindset, and it's all about doubling down on your personal strengths. So uh, people who don't have that entrepreneurial bug quite yet, they go through the workshop, and that we have a startup factory workshop that tells you about all the components of the mindset and shows you places in your life where you can apply that at forks in the road and decisions you make about your career and the community that you operate in, the friends that you make. And as they make those choices, it's pretty clear to realize that if you simply have a vision in your own mind of what you'd like to get done with your life, and you can make that vision be the determining force in the choices that you make, a little bit of intentionality goes a very, very long way to people realizing that they're in charge of their own life.
Right.
And once they get that bug, it really doesn't have as much to do with any particular idea. It's more that they realize, wow, I'm in more of a control of my life than I think. And rather than be somebody that is constantly reacting to the world, you can choose to respond to the world in a more formal way and in a more intentional way, and then hold out in the future this idea that I'm heading here. And if you can at least know the general direction that you're heading, then you've got some decision criteria for all the other decisions that you make. And so that tends to bring out the tenacity and the commitment and the reliability and the need for a community and all the other things that tend to make an entrepreneur function.
Right.
And so we teach it from that point of view. It's not so much, do you have what it takes to run a business? It's let's help you more effectively run your life. And if that includes taking your passions and going and creating a business to bring your ideas and talents to the world with you at the controls, then that's great. But it doesn't always work that way, and that's okay too.
Okay. So along the same lines, are there certain things that you look for in a student that give you a feel? Are they gonna have the DNA to really be a successful entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a tricky one too, right? Because anybody that comes into the center and sits at my desk has they've shown the initiative to get up out of their chair and make an appointment and come here, right? Mm-hmm. So they're already ahead of the game.
Right.
But you can always tell when somebody shows up just by the way they present themselves, right? When they sit down, are they taking notes? Are they listening? Do they have questions prepared? There's a lot of indicators that I see. We've helped 1,000 student startups since 2014, and you recognize the patterns now almost mm-hmm. instinctively.
Right.
So that it's certain you can teach people to do those things, but the ones that do it because they know it's important, whether it's because of how they were raised or because of life experience or whatever mm-hmm. it was, it does make a difference. And the biggest, as you well know, the biggest indicator for an entrepreneur to be important is whether they are willing to take action, right? A lot of people love to talk about their ideas, and they can sit around and imagine a future where that idea has taken shape. But the person that shows up and says, what can I do next? And then they go do it, that's the biggest indicator of success that we see.
Oh, great answer. Yeah, I agree with you. I see so many people that talk about, well, I'm going to start my own business, and I got a great idea, but they never take action and do anything about it.
Yeah. And sometimes they're super quick to imagine a world where the business is wildly successful, right? So they're out in the common area, and you can hear them carving up the equity. And if we sell this at $10 million, right? They just jump to that, and which you want that kind of optimism, enthusiasm, but you also want to make sure someone's grounded and actually is going to roll up their sleeves.
There's a lot of hard work between A and E,
yes,
or F.
Right.
Yeah, very good, very good.
talked about vision, I'll tell you a story that I think
Okay.
is funny. And you can,
Yeah.
how which is, but we talk about vision a lot. And when we retooled the Center for Entrepreneurship to focus on the entrepreneurial mindset rather than focus on creating businesses, which is sort of tactical and mechanical, we wanted to sort of unlock this intrinsic motivation. And we would deal a lot with community members. And we had a woman come in. She was in her late 50s, and she said, I've been cleaning houses for my whole adult life. And she said she came in just to sort of get an idea, how do I run this business? I've been doing this for so long, but I never took a business class. I just would like to engage. And somewhere along the line, she heard that the Center for Entrepreneurship is available. So we had this conversation about where she's going and her vision. And she said, well, my vision for myself in 3 to 5 years is I'd really love to be a motorcycle mechanic. And I said, really?
Wow.
That's something. So over the course of the next few months, we organized her business so that her employees could run it in her absence. And she flew to the Southwest and went to Harley-Davidson Motorcycle Mechanic School.
Very cool.
And the entire time that we're in COVID-19 lockdown, she's learning how to be a motorcycle mechanic and is about to graduate and come back to Boone and live her dream.
Fantastic.
So there's never a point in time where you're too old to figure out what you want to do. And
Right.
just the power of defining what that vision is for yourself makes a huge difference.
And you guys really worked with her on creating the path to that, which was something that she really couldn't do on her own.
Right.
And that's the big help.
That's right.
There. Excellent.
That's it.
Excellent. Great story.
Yeah.
You going to tell me about the Butch story?
Well, the story.
Was there a lesson in there somewhere?
Well, shockingly, the lesson is similar to what we just talked about, right? So we talk about whether that entrepreneurial mindset can be taught or whether it's innate. Is sometimes it's so innate in a human being that it cannot be contained.
Right.
It's just that natural drive that's remarkable. And the example that you're asking about is a man named Butch Caton. And he grew up, he didn't get past an 8th grade education. He grew up poor and decided that he was going to do something with his life. And sometimes those difficulties in the front end are exactly the motivation that people need,
Right.
So that builds the strength and the resilience and it motivates people in ways that you can't if you grow up without any adversities.
Right.
So Butch borrowed a truck, and he would drive around and find scrap metal, and he would put it in the back of the truck, and he would take it and sell it. And that's how he earned food and clothing. And he earned enough eventually to buy his own truck. And so he would drive around, and then he got bigger trucks, and then he got some land, and he stored it and piled it up and brought it in. And so the big innovation for him is he was in Louisiana, and in the Gulf of Mexico, you have oil rigs, and those oil rigs need to be they need to be taken down.
Refurbished.
Not even refurbished.
Oh,
Decommissioned.
Decommissioned, right.
The oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico need to be decommissioned by law after a certain amount of time.
Right.
They
So they have to basically go out in the ocean or in the land and just disassemble the things.
Right.
Okay.
And so the opportunity that Butch recognized is that in the Gulf of Mexico, you've got oil companies with all these big rigs drilling oil in the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, and those by law need to be decommissioned after they have finished their life cycle. The oil companies used to have to take those down and then pay to dispose of them. Butch came in and said, I'm going to flip that model upside down. I'm going to buy the oil rigs from the oil companies. And so what used to become an expense was now a source of revenue.
Wow.
And he went in and bought up all the oil rigs as they get decommissioned. And then he, in his yard, this big tract of land, he would hire welders who would come and cut these oil rigs into 2-foot by 3-foot sections of steel.
Wow.
And he would first he'd go through and take out everything of value, every bit of copper, every bit of electronics. And like ants would hit this thing and just tear it all down,
right,
and then chop it all up. And then he would put it on barges and sell the steel. And he now makes tens of millions of dollars selling recycled steel, or scrap steel, and then recycling all of the components of these oil rigs.
So it came from nothing and just was able to, without a high school education or a college education, was able to make a successful business.
That's right. And sometimes those adversities that people feel gives them just the right fuel in order to go make something happen. We find out, and if you do the research, you realize that there's a shocking proportion of people with dyslexia and ADHD and other sorts of learning disorders that become entrepreneurs because they have learned how to survive in a world that wasn't designed for them.
Right.
The goal is to get as many of those assumptions that you've made challenged in that process on paper,
Right.
in combination with what you've learned in customer discovery, so
Right.
that sometimes I've had students sit down and work through that and realize, oh my God, I'm not gonna make any money at this, right? So they say, I'm not doing
It's not a
this one. This
business.
is not gonna work.
Yeah, it's not a business.
And that's the time to learn it, right?
Right.
You've
You
not,
don't want to do it
you've
after
not-
you've sunk a lot of money into it.
exactly.
Right.
It's so, and sometimes they'll be super optimistic and they'll imagine, they do the top-down math that says, I'm gonna open a food truck. There's 50,000 people in Watauga County and they're all get hungry, so therefore if I can win 10% of the market, right?
Mhm.
That's that super high level kind of number
Analysis,
crunching,
right.
where we try to think about from the bottoms up is what kind of traffic do you expect to see in the location that you've selected, and how many meals can you make in an hour? And so you figure out what your constraints are,
Right.
and then you start to imagine how much revenue you can generate with the constraints that exist in
Yeah,
the business.
can you scale the business at all? Right.
And so when you build from the bottom up, then you got a sort of a baseline that you can build on and optimize instead of the top down, which you're pretty much lost when you get started.
Right.
So those kind of things get the students. If you collect the customer feedback and customer discovery, and you challenge all your assumptions with the goal of creating a business model and a spreadsheet, you end up answering and challenging a lot of the assumptions that you make along the way, and at the end, you've got something that, if the numbers work and the assumptions seem to hold, then it's time to get rolling. But more often than not, students will try multiple things and make lots of revisions. And like I said, there's numerous opportunities for the students to pivot, and the ones that are successful have done it many times.
Yeah, a lot of times that's the way a startup works. You
Yeah.
listen to the market.
Yeah.
You go the direction the market's driving you.
Yeah, we've got a student that's sitting outside right now, as a matter of fact, that came in and he pitched an idea where they figured out how to do augmented reality characters, and so their whole business model was they're gonna teach these characters how to use gym equipment,
Uh-huh.
and that way when you go into the gym, you'll be able to see the bench press, and you can pull up a bench press animation, and there's somebody sitting on the bench press and doing the exercise and talking you through how to do it correctly,
Great idea.
which was super cool.
Yeah.
That was about 60 days before COVID hit, and and all the gyms closed, right?
Right.
So they're trying to figure out how to make their product viable, and so in the 18 months it took since everything was shut down, they took that idea and developed into a digital human creation tool. So rather than them creating the characters, they created a tool so that the customer can create the characters,
Okay.
which opens up a gigantic new business opportunity
Sure.
for them, and they're launching in 2 weeks.
Fantastic.
Yes.
What's the name of the company?
It's called Hologress.
Hologress. Interesting.
I want to thank Eric and staff for hosting us for the interview. They're doing amazing things working with students and the community on starting businesses. If you'd like to donate to the Student Venture Fund to help the students out with funding, please get in touch with the Entrepreneurial Program up at Appalachian State. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this content, please subscribe to the Flying Fishing Food YouTube channel. There will be more to come in this leadership series. Thanks again.